Problems facing lovers in Sudan. Here's a detailed comparison of the problems facing lovers in Gaddaref when they want to meet in privacy, contrasted with the situations in Kassala and Khartoum, as described in the novel. Privacy challenges for lovers in Gaddaref. Gaddaref is depicted as a conservative, rural city with strong tribal and family ties. The social environment is highly restrictive, especially for young women. Here are the main challenges lovers face. Community surveillance. Gaddaref is a tightly knit Muslim community where everyone knows each other's business. Dating is heavily influenced by family approval, and there is constant surveillance by relatives, neighbors, and religious leaders. Traditional norms. Courtship usually happens through family introductions or community events. Public displays of affection are rare and considered scandalous. Indirect communication. Couples often rely on indirect communication, letters, phone calls, or meeting in family settings rather than open dating. Secret meetings are risky and can lead to severe consequences if discovered. Stigma and danger. Any perceived transgression, such as a girl meeting a boy in private, can result in gossip, social ostracism, or even violence. Girls who are suspected of having a romantic relationship before marriage are labeled as bad girls and may face honor-based violence or forced marriage. Lack of safe spaces. There are no open entertainment places for lovers. Some risk meeting in isolated areas like football fields at night, but these are dangerous, frequented by intoxicated men, and have led to incidents of violence and sexual assault. Lovers are essentially forced to meet in secrecy, always fearing discovery and punishment. Lovers in Kassala. Kassala is described as more open than Gaddaref, but still retains conservative customs. Cultural heritage. Kassala is known for its Beja traditions and scenic landscapes. Love and romance are often expressed through poetry and music. Conservative dating. Dating tends to be conservative, with strong emphasis on respect and modesty. Families play a central role in approving relationships. Symbolic gestures. Gifts like traditional jewelry or fabrics are common tokens of affection, and cultural festivals provide opportunities for social interaction. Public spaces. Lovers in Kassala enjoy more freedom than in Gaddaref. It is common to see couples holding hands and walking along the bank of the Gash River. However, public displays of affection are still limited, and family approval remains important. Lovers in Khartoum. Khartoum, the capital, offers the most privacy and freedom for lovers. Urban influence. As the capital, Khartoum has a more cosmopolitan vibe. While traditional values remain strong, modern dating practices are more visible. Social spaces, cafes, universities, and cultural events are common meeting points for couples. There is more anonymity, and it is easier for lovers to meet without attracting attention. Blended norms. Many young people balance traditional expectations with modern communication, social media, texting, making dating more flexible than in rural areas. Relative safety. Lovers can meet in public places like the Nile riverbank, restaurants, hotels, and cinemas. While there are still risks, such as police harassment or predatory men, the dangers are less severe than in Gaddaref. The city's size and diversity provide a degree of anonymity and safety that is unavailable in smaller towns. Summary table. City. Privacy for lovers. Main challenges. Opportunities for privacy. Gaddaref. Extremely limited. Community surveillance, gossip, risk of violence, no safe spaces. Secret letters, rare risky meetings in isolated areas. Kassala. Somewhat limited. Family approval, conservative customs. Walks by the Gash River, poetry, music, symbolic gifts. Khartoum. Most privacy. Some police harassment, but less community surveillance. Cafes, universities, riverbank, hotels, cinemas, social media. In essence, lovers in Gaddaref face the harshest restrictions and dangers, with almost no opportunity for private meetings. Kassala offers a little more freedom, especially in public spaces like the riverbank, but still operates within a conservative framework. Khartoum, as a large urban center, provides the most privacy and opportunities for lovers to meet, though traditional values still exert some influence. Emotional and psychological impact. Fear and anxiety. Characters like Inasar and Sammy live in constant fear of discovery, gossip, and punishment. The ever-present surveillance in Gedaref means their love must remain secret, creating anxiety and a sense of isolation. Intisar, for example, is forced to hide her feelings and actions, knowing that even a rumor can lead to severe consequences such as forced marriage or violence. Internalized shame. The stigma attached to premarital relationships causes characters, especially women, to internalize shame and guilt. Inasar is labeled a bad girl for falling in love, and this affects her self-worth and her relationship with her family and community. Barriers to communication and intimacy. Indirect communication. Lovers like Inasar and Sammy must rely on letters, secret meetings, and coded messages. This lack of open communication leads to misunderstandings, missed opportunities, and a sense of longing and frustration. Their relationship is built on stolen moments and the constant threat of being caught. Lack of safe spaces. The absence of private, safe places for lovers to meet in Gedaref means that their relationship cannot develop naturally. This contrasts with Khartoum, where there is more anonymity and freedom, allowing for deeper intimacy and more open expression of love. Social and familial consequences. Forced marriage and betrayal. The restrictive environment in Gedaref leads to forced marriages, as seen when Intisar is married off without her consent. This act is a direct result of the community's desire to control female sexuality and maintain social order. It causes deep betrayal and trauma for Intisar, shattering her trust in her family and community. Family conflict. The forced marriage and the stigma of a love affair create rifts within families. Intisar's family is torn apart by jealousy, rivalry, and the pressure to conform to social norms. Her mother is powerless to protect her, and her siblings are divided in their loyalties. Impact on romantic relationships. Separation and longing. The challenges in Gedaref force lovers like Intisar and Sammy to separate, either physically, when Intisar flees to Khartoum, or emotionally, when forced marriage intervenes. Their love is tested by distance, societal pressure, and the threat of violence. Transformation of love. In Khartoum, the relative freedom allows their relationship to blossom, but the trauma and scars from Gedaref remain. The contrast between the two environments highlights what has been lost and what might have been possible in a more open society. Catalyst for resistance and change. Acts of defiance. The oppressive environment becomes a catalyst for resistance. Intisar's refusal to accept her forced marriage, her escape to Khartoum, and her eventual fight for autonomy are acts of defiance against the system that seeks to control her. Solidarity and support. The challenges also foster solidarity among women and between lovers. Characters like Frida and Mona support Intisar, and their shared suffering creates bonds of empathy and mutual aid. Tragic outcomes. Violence and loss. The story does not shy away from the tragic consequences of these challenges. Forced marriage, honor-based violence, and the breakdown of families lead to trauma, loss, and, in some cases, death. The inability to love freely and safely has devastating effects on the characters' lives. In summary, the social, legal, and cultural challenges facing lovers in Gedaref create an environment of fear, secrecy, and repression. These challenges shape the characters' emotional lives, relationships, and choices, often leading to tragedy, but also inspiring acts of courage and resistance. The contrast with Kassala and Khartoum underscores the arbitrariness of these restrictions and the human cost of denying young people the freedom to love and choose their own destinies. Effects on the characters. Intisar and Sammy. For Intisar and Sammy, the challenges of meeting in privacy in Gedaref mean that their relationship must be conducted in secrecy, through letters and stolen moments. The risk of discovery is ever-present, and the consequences are dire: social ostracism, family conflict, and even forced marriage. When they travel to Khartoum, they experience a sense of liberation and anonymity, but also encounter new dangers. The city offers new possibilities, hotels, universities, and public spaces where secrecy is easier to maintain. Yet danger lurks: police harassment, predatory men, and the looming threat of imprisonment. The lover's hope is tempered by the realization that Khartoum's freedom comes with new forms of peril. Firdas, Intisar's younger sister, is deeply affected by the social and religious constraints of Gedaref. Her internal monologue reveals her anxiety about marriage, obedience, and the fear of abandonment. Her inner dialogue reveals a tragic lack of autonomy. She sees herself as an object of utility and pleasure, not as an individual with aspirations. Even her understanding of aging is framed through the lens of disposability. When she grows older, her husband is permitted to marry another woman who can offer more sexual pleasure. This thought underscores her anxiety about losing relevance and her desperate need to maintain favor. Specific examples: bus journey to Khartoum. When Intisar, Sami, and Firdas travel to Khartoum, other passengers mistake Intisar and Sami for newlyweds, which provides a rare moment of public acceptance and joy for the couple. However, this is contrasted with the constant surveillance and suspicion they face in Gedaref. The bus rattled along the dusty road, its windows framing endless plains that stretched toward Khartoum. Intisar sat by the window. Her Sudanese sari is wrapped neatly around her, shielding her from curious eyes. Sami squeezed into the seat beside her, their suitcases tucked under their feet. An elderly woman across the aisle leaned in, her eyes twinkling.
Mabrok ya aris wa arusa.
Newly married, eh? Intisar's cheeks flushed crimson. Sami, not yet, auntie, but soon, inshallah. Khartoum riverbank. In Khartoum, Intisar experiences a rare moment of anonymity and peace on the riverbank, contrasting sharply with the oppression she faces elsewhere. Intisar's response to the reflection of the moon on the Nile is deeply symbolic and emotional. The text portrays the moonlight shimmering on the river like a silver ribbon, creating a rare moment of anonymity and peace for her in contrast to the violence and oppression she faces elsewhere. Summary. The challenges of meeting in privacy deeply affect the characters, shaping their relationships, choices, and fates. In Gedaref, the oppressive environment forces secrecy and leads to tragic consequences. In Khartoum, the relative freedom is offset by new dangers, but also allows for moments of hope and connection. These contrasts highlight the broader themes of the novel: the struggle for autonomy, the cost of resistance, and the search for dignity and love in the face of overwhelming oppression. The trip to Khartoum. The first trip of Sami, Intisar, and Firdas to Khartoum unfolds as a mix of excitement and discovery. Reason for travel. The journey was initiated after a phone call from Frida, who asked her sisters Intisar and Firdas to come to Khartoum to meet her at the international airport. Frida suggested that Sami accompany them for safety, as he was considered trustworthy. At this time, Sami had already proposed to Intisar in a letter, so he was thrilled about traveling together. Departure. 3 weeks after Sami's tense discussion with his father, the trio reserved seats on the Taysir bus, departing at 10 a.m. Other passengers mistook Sami and Intisar for newlyweds, adding a romantic undertone to the trip. The bus ride was filled with silent anticipation and private joy for the couple, who looked forward to their future together. Arrival in Khartoum. When they reached the bustling city, they checked into the Stars Hotel near the international airport. Intisar and Firdas shared a room, while Sami stayed alone. Despite the brief separation, Sami and Intisar cherished the memories of their time on the bus and anticipated their upcoming honeymoon. First evening. At 6 p.m., the trio took a taxi to the Nile riverbank. Sami, acting as the group leader, suggested spending an hour by the river and then dining at the Mogren restaurant. The sisters, who had never seen Khartoum before, eagerly agreed. During this outing, Firdas began to emerge from her bad mood and asked Sami curious questions about the city, its bright lights, numerous cars, and modern fashion, revealing her innocence and wonder. This trip marked a turning point for all three. For Sami and Intisar, it was a step toward freedom and love. For Firdas, it was an introduction to a world far removed from her rural life. Atmosphere and departure. The trip begins with a sense of secrecy and anticipation. Intisar, Sammy, and Firdas board the bus, leaving behind the suffocating surveillance of Gedaref's conservative community. The journey itself symbolizes a step toward freedom, though it is fraught with anxiety. The bus ride is long, crowded, and tense. Intisar feels both excitement and fear, aware that discovery could mean punishment, yet hopeful for the anonymity Khartoum might offer. Firdas acts as a companion and buffer, helping to deflect suspicion and provide emotional support. Transition of setting. As the bus moves from rural Gedaref toward the capital, the landscape shifts from small-town constraints to the sprawling, chaotic energy of Khartoum. This physical movement mirrors the psychological shift from suffocation under family and community control to the risks of urban life. On the bus. The ride is filled with chatter, vendors calling out snacks, children giggling, and the hum of an old radio playing a love song. An elderly woman across the aisle mistakes Sammy and Intisar for newlyweds, adding a romantic undertone to the trip. She says, "Mabruk ya Eris wa Arusa." Newly married, eh? Intisar blushes, but Sammy playfully responds, "Not yet, auntie, but soon, inshallah." The bus erupts in laughter, and for a fleeting moment, the couple feels blessed by the world rather than cursed by it. Emotional dynamics. Intisar is both mortified and secretly delighted by the attention. Sammy reassures her, embarrassing? Intisar, this is the first time anyone has blessed us instead of cursing us. Let's enjoy it. The teasing and laughter on the bus turn their fear into something lighter, almost like a celebration. For the first time since leaving Gedaref, they feel like maybe, just maybe, the world is on their side. Arrival in Khartoum. Upon arrival, the city offers new possibilities, hotels, universities, and public spaces where secrecy is easier to maintain. The lovers' hope is tempered by the realization that Khartoum's freedom comes with new forms of peril. Essence of the journey. Their first bus trip to Khartoum is both a flight from oppression and a step into uncertain freedom. It marks the beginning of a new phase in their struggle, escaping the suffocating control of Gedaref only to face the harsher systemic dangers of the capital. Direct excerpt, paraphrased for clarity. The bus rattled along the dusty road, its windows framing endless plains that stretched toward Khartoum. Intisar sat by the window, her sari is wrapped neatly around her, shielding her from curious eyes. Sammy squeezed into the seat beside her, their suitcases tucked under their feet. The air inside was thick with chatter, vendors calling out snacks, children giggling, the hum of an old radio playing a love song. As the bus lurched forward, an elderly woman across the aisle leaned in, her eyes twinkling.
Mabrok ya Aris wa Arusa.
Newly married, eh? Intisar's cheeks flushed crimson. She opened her mouth to protest, but Sammy beat her to it, his voice calm and playful. "Not yet, auntie, but soon, inshallah." The woman chuckled, nudging the man beside her. Soon, whispers spread like wildfire through the rows. A young boy grinned and called out, "Give us sweets, ya Eris." Laughter rippled through the bus. Intisar lowered her gaze, her heart pounding, while Sammy leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let them think what they want. For once, it feels nice, doesn't it?" She smiled despite herself, the tension melting into something softer, hope, maybe even joy. Outside, the horizon shimmered with promise, and inside, for a fleeting moment, they felt like the world had already blessed their union. The novel describes the bus as flying like an airplane over the surrounding natural beauty and the green carpet spread along the highway for the bride and groom to travel on to evoke a sense of freedom, exhilaration, and the extraordinary nature of the journey for Intisar and Sammy. Why this imagery? Contrast with oppression. In Gedaref, the lovers are constantly watched, judged, and restricted by family and society. The bus journey symbolizes their escape from these constraints. By likening the bus to an airplane, the narrative emphasizes the feeling of breaking free from the suffocating environment of their hometown. Romantic elevation. The green carpet of grass and the bus flying suggest a magical, almost fairy tale quality to their journey. It elevates their love story, making this moment feel unique and full of promise. Emotional high. For Intisar and Sammy, this is not just a physical journey, but an emotional one. The imagery of flight and a lush, green path reflects their hope, excitement, and the sense that, for a brief time, the world is opening up to them. Direct excerpt. The bus flies like an airplane over the surrounding natural beauty. Above them is the cloudy sky, behind which the sun's rays are hidden. At the same time, clouds send flying drops of light rain. On both sides of the long highway, green grass covers the ground. It is like a green carpet spread along the highway for the bride and groom to travel on. In summary, the bus is described as an airplane flying on a green carpet to capture the sense of liberation, romance, and the extraordinary hope that Intisar and Sammy feel as they journey together towards a new chapter in their lives, away from the restrictions of their home. The Everlasting Vow. Intisar and Sammy's first bus trip to Khartoum. During their first journey together from Gedaref to Khartoum, Intisar and Sammy experience a rare moment of privacy and freedom, away from the oppressive eyes of their families and community. The bus ride is filled with anticipation, excitement, and a sense of escape. The couple, mistaken by fellow passengers for newlyweds, are able to relax and express their feelings more openly than ever before. As the bus travels through the Sudanese landscape, the atmosphere inside is lightened by the teasing of other passengers, who call out blessings and jokes to the bride and groom. This playful environment allows Intisar and Sammy to drop their guard and enjoy each other's company, sharing laughter and whispered conversations. In this intimate setting, the couple make a solemn and passionate vow to one another. They promise that no authority on earth or power in heaven can separate us from each other. This vow is not just spoken, but physically sealed. They clench their hands together, look into each other's eyes, and repeat the words in unison. The vow is then sealed with their lips and blessed with a long hug, symbolizing their unity and the depth of their commitment. Direct excerpt. He whispered in her ear, "Let us make a vow, and let this wonderful day be a witness, and let us confirm it with our lips. Let's say together, no authority on earth or power in heaven can separate us from each other." Therefore, Sammy and Intisar clenched their hands and looked at each other and said their eternal vow. They sealed it with their lips and blessed it with a long hug until they heard the bus attendant announce their arrival in Khartoum. This vow, made in the liminal space of the bus, neither fully in their old world nor yet in the new, becomes a defining moment for their relationship. It is a declaration of resistance against the forces that seek to keep them apart, and a promise to remain united despite the many hardships they will face. The memory of this vow sustains them through the trials that follow, including forced marriage, family betrayal, and societal condemnation. This passage captures the emotional and physical expression of their vow: spoken words, hand clasp, eye contact, and a sealing kiss and embrace, making it a defining moment in their relationship. Arrival and setting. After a long, tense, and emotionally charged bus journey from Gedaref, Intisar, Sammy, and Fergus arrive in Khartoum. The city is bustling and unfamiliar, offering both hope and new dangers. The trio checks into the Stars Hotel near the international airport. Intisar and Fergus share a room, while Sammy stays alone. Despite the brief separation, Sammy and Intisar cherish the memories of their time on the bus and anticipate their upcoming imaginary honeymoon. The first evening, the Nile riverbank. At 6 p.m., the three take a taxi to the Nile riverbank. Sammy, acting as the group leader, suggests they spend an hour by the river and then dine at the Mogren restaurant. The sisters, who have never seen Khartoum before, eagerly agree. Fergus, initially in a bad mood, begins to emerge from her shell, asking Sammy curious questions about the city, its bright lights, numerous cars, and modern fashion, revealing her innocence and wonder. Excerpt. The sun hung low over the Nile, painting the water in shimmering gold. Intisar stepped onto the soft riverbank, her sandals sinking slightly into the warm sand. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh water and distant acacia trees, brushing against her face like a tender greeting. She laughed softly, the sound mingling with a rhythmic lapping of waves against the shore. Children played nearby, their giggles echoing across the open space, while fishermen cast their nets with practiced grace. Intisar crouched down, trailing her fingers through the cool water, marveling at its clarity and the way it reflected the endless blue sky. For a moment, she closed her eyes, feeling the serenity of Khartoum's heartbeat in the river's flow. As the sun began to set, hues of orange and pink danced across the horizon. Intisar stood still, her heart swelling with wonder and gratitude. This was more than a visit, it was a memory etched in light and laughter, a joyful communion with nature and the timeless Nile. The moon and the city lights. As night falls, Intisar is captivated by the moon's reflection on the Nile, which symbolizes hope, longing, and a rare moment of peace in contrast to the violence and oppression she faces elsewhere. The moon becomes a nurturing, feminine presence, allowing her to feel and express emotions, joy, longing, and hope that she usually has to suppress. The dazzling lights along Nile Street fill her with quiet resilience and awe. After enduring hardship, she walks through streets that pulsed with energy, where neon lights flicker above tea stalls and the Nile glimmers like a silver ribbon under the moonlight. For the first time, she feels anonymous, just two faces in a sea of strangers, and even manages a faint smile, saying, "Nothing could stop me now." This moment signals a sense of liberation and wonder at the vibrant scene around her. Emotional dynamics. For Sammy and Intisar, this first night is a step toward freedom and love. The city's anonymity allows them to be themselves, to dream, and to hope for a future together. The contrast between the stifling, patriarchal world of Gedaref and the relative openness of Khartoum underscores the central themes of the novel: the struggle for freedom, the cost of resistance, and the hope for a better life. Summary table. Scene/location. Description and mood. Hotel arrival. Relief, anticipation, brief separation, but shared excitement for the future. Nile riverbank. Wonder, serenity, laughter, and a sense of belonging. Intisar marvels at the beauty and freedom. Moon and city lights. Symbolism of hope and longing. Intisar feels anonymous and liberated. Nothing could stop me now. Emotional dynamic. First taste of freedom, intimacy, and hope for a new life together. In essence, their first night in Khartoum is a blend of awe, relief, and tentative joy. It is a night of new beginnings, where the city's lights and the river's serenity offer a brief sanctuary from the oppression they have fled. The experience is both a celebration of their love and a foreshadowing of the challenges and dangers that still lie ahead. The hotel room, anticipation, and tenderness. Back at the hotel, the sisters retire to their room, and Sammy is left alone. The separation is painful for the newly engaged couple, but they overcome it by cherishing the memories of their time on the bus and looking forward to the honeymoon that awaits them. The night is filled with anticipation, tenderness, and the quiet thrill of being together in a new city, away from the prying eyes and harsh judgments of their hometown. Dialogue and emotional connection. Their private conversation is marked by vulnerability and honesty. They talk about their dreams, their fears, and the obstacles they face. The city's anonymity allows them to be open with each other, to share their true selves without fear of condemnation. This night marks a turning point in their relationship, a step toward freedom, intimacy, and the possibility of a life built on love and mutual respect. Summary. Their first night in Khartoum is a blend of excitement, relief, and emotional intimacy. The city's anonymity gives them a sense of freedom and hope, allowing them to dream of a future together. Their private conversation is filled with tenderness, vulnerability, and the promise of new beginnings, marking a pivotal moment in their love story. Their first conversation at the riverbank. Their conversation at the riverbank is intimate and filled with admiration and affection. Intisar is so moved by the scene that she exclaims to Sammy, "My dear, look at the beautiful moon. Watch its reflection in the river water." There are more than 1,000 bright lights in this place. Look at sailing boats. Sammy, please take us into a boat so we can sail along the riverbank. Lovers are sitting together everywhere. This place is like a lover's paradise. Look at that beautiful island over there. Come, Sammy, let's cross the river and go to that wonderful island. We will stay there forever. Sammy, recognizing her sense of release, allows her to express her feelings freely. He observes her excitement and lets her enjoy the moment, understanding that she is like a bird that has been caged for too long and is now finally free. After some time, Intisar, exhausted from her excitement, sits near Sammy, her face shining with happiness. Sammy then whispers to her, "Do you know, Intisar, if I collect all the beauty of this place, it can equal yours? You are the wonder of wonders. You are brighter than all these lights. The moon might envy your beauty if it has eyes and sees you. Girls and their lovers will gather around you to see that all their beauty and charm are embedded in you." These words deeply move Intisar, and she feels his love pouring into her soul. The scene is filled with tenderness as Sammy holds her, and they share a moment of closeness and affection. The riverbank, with its moonlight and gentle breeze, becomes the backdrop for their blossoming romance, marking the beginning of a love that will be tested by many hardships. Sammy admires many qualities in Intisar, both on a personal and emotional level, and his admiration is expressed repeatedly throughout the novel in both his words and actions. Here are the main aspects Sammy admires about Intisar, with direct references and excerpts from the text. 1. Her beauty. Sammy is immediately captivated by Intisar's physical beauty. He describes her as uniquely beautiful, with features that stand out even among other admired girls in their city. He is especially drawn to her eyes, which he finds enchanting and expressive. "I have seen many beautiful girls, but your beauty is unique. From those few words you said to me that day, I saw many good qualities in you. I may forget everything, but I will never forget your beautiful eyes. Since I saw them, they have held me captive in love for you. While you were talking to me that day, I noticed that you have a habit of speaking through the eyes. So, your lovely eyes told me more than the few words your sweet lips whispered. Your beautiful eyes inspired love, hope, and happiness in my heart. So, I will be in love with them as long as I live." 2. Her intelligence and openness. Sammy admires Intisar's intellect and her willingness to speak her mind, which is rare in their conservative society. He is impressed by her enlightenment and her ability to engage in meaningful conversation. "Anyway, I found that you are an enlightened and open girl, which is why I fell in love with you at first sight. I can still hear your words echo. I wrote your words in my diary." 3. Her independence and strength. Sammy respects Intisar's independence and her refusal to conform to societal expectations, such as rejecting marriage proposals to focus on her studies and personal growth. She is praised for her beauty more than all the other girls. She got the highest number of marriage proposals among the girls in her city. Every boy who saw her would like to marry her. But she rejected everyone, citing her studies, and did not tell anyone the real reason behind her continuous refusal. 4. Her voice and presence. Sammy is enchanted by Intisar's voice and the way she carries herself. He finds her presence magnetic and her voice overly sweet and musical. Here she becomes shy. Many people told her that she is beautiful and always made her feel proud. Yet, she never enjoyed the word beautiful and understood its true meaning until that day. She makes her voice sweeter than it was on that wonderful day. When she whispers them to herself, she realizes that not only is she beautiful, but she also has an overly sweet musical voice. 5. Her courage and willingness to love. Sammy admires Intisar's courage to love him despite the risks and opposition they face. He values her sincerity and the depth of her feelings. "Even if you reject my love, I will still love you. Every cell of my body loves you." 6. Her uniqueness and authenticity. Sammy sees Intisar as different from other girls in their society, not just in appearance, but in spirit and authenticity. He is drawn to her individuality and the way she stands out. "From those few words you said to me that day, I saw many good qualities in you. I have not seen such qualities in any girl in our society. Whenever I meet a girl, whether she is alone or in a group, I find her deaf and dumb. Of course, our girls are victims of the misconception that if a girl talks to a boy, she is a bad girl. I found that you are an enlightened and open girl, which is why I fell in love with you at first sight. 7. Her effect on him. Sammy is deeply affected by Intisar's presence and words. Her letters, her looks, and her actions inspire him, give him hope, and make him feel alive. Your beautiful eyes inspired love, hope, and happiness in my heart. So, I will be in love with them as long as I live. In summary, Sammy admires Intisar's beauty, intelligence, independence, voice, courage, uniqueness, and the profound effect she has on his heart and soul. His admiration is not superficial. It is rooted in her character, her spirit, and the way she challenges and inspires him in a society that tries to suppress such qualities in women. Intisar is deeply moved by Sammy's admiration and affection. She responds with joy and emotional intensity. She reads and rereads his letter, kisses it, presses it to her chest, and even memorizes it. The letter becomes a precious treasure to her, and she treats it almost like a sacred text. Philosophical reflection. Intisar reflects on the nature of love, referencing philosophical ideas from Sartre and Gandhi, and concludes that her love for Sammy is unique, deep, and divinely inspired. She feels she was born with the desire to be his beloved. Reciprocal admiration. She assures Sammy that she loves him with all her mind, soul, and body, and is willing to give up everything and everyone to be with him. She promises that no force on earth can uproot your love from my heart. Commitment and hope. Intisar expresses her willingness to face any hardship or challenge for the sake of their love and ends her letter with a passionate declaration. I loved you yesterday, I love you today, and I will love you forever. Direct excerpt from Intisar's letter. I never wanted anyone in this life to love me but you. In fact, I was born with this desire for you and for you alone. Therefore, I love you with all my mind, with all my soul, and so does my body love you too. And I'm willing to give up everyone and everything in order to be with you. I have kissed your letter 1,000 times, and this letter I have kissed it more than my heart beats. You can see the traces of my lips and hear my heartbeat in every letter and every expression my pen wrote to you. By our eternal love, we must prove to everyone that we are inseparable lovers, and not even death can set us apart. The zoo scene. First visit. Sammy left the two sisters standing in front of the main entrance and went to buy tickets. After a while, he returned with another handsome young man. This is my friend Salah Hassan Ahmed Salah, Sammy said with joy. The sisters responded by smiling at the newcomer. Sammy turned to his friend Salah and proudly said, This is my girlfriend. The newcomer shouted Intisar before Sammy finished his introduction. You are right, and this is her sister Firdaus. Then the fiancé smiled and said to his fiancée, You must have been surprised that my friend knew your name even though he had never seen you before. That's because he's my best friend and roommate in the university barracks. In addition, he is also from the city of Gedaref. The new arrival said, Believe me, Intisar. Never in my life have I seen someone love a girl as much as Sammy loves you. I'm so happy to see you two together, but I'm really mad at my friend for forgetting to invite his best friend to his wedding. Intisar's joy. Sammy's sweet fiancée is delighted to visit the zoo for the first time in her life. She would make jokes and talk to each animal. Sammy had to pull or push her to move her to the next cage. He looked at his watch and realized half the time had been spent in a few cages. Listen, my dear. If you want to talk to every animal, the honeymoon will be spent in the zoo only. Please, Sammy, let me talk to these two cute monkeys. Hello, Mr. Monkey. How are you, Lady Monkey? Do you love me? Sammy once again had to pull her out of her hand. When they passed the cage of the beautiful monkeys, Intisar stopped her fiancé and asked surprisingly, Where are the other two? There are at least 4 or 5 cages in front of us. We must run to catch up with them. They raced quickly until they reached Salah and Firdaus. Symbolism. Do you know, dear Sammy, that the animals in this garden are happier than humans and have more freedom than us? There are no rich and poor among animals. They can fall in love with each other, and there are no social barriers separating them. Their parents do not choose their life partners. One animal does not have 2, 3, or 4 wives at the same time as Muslim men are allowed by the Quran to do. They do not divorce their wives as humans often do. Furthermore, they do not force a young female animal to marry an older male animal. The first date at Hamad Floating Restaurant. Setting and atmosphere. Hamad Floating Restaurant is described as the most attractive place for lovers in the capital city, Khartoum. It is a large floating ship moored near the riverbank, designed for privacy and romance. The interior is dimly lit with only red lights, and the tables are arranged for couples or small groups, creating an intimate, dreamy atmosphere. The restaurant is a favorite for those seeking a romantic escape, and it is considered a land of dreams for lovers. Arrival and first impressions. When Intisar, Sammy, and their friends Scylla and Firdaus enter the restaurant, they are immediately struck by its beauty and ambience. When the 4 friends entered, they stood motionless and said in unison, "Wow." A pretty girl who is one of the waitresses quickly approached them and asked them in a soft voice to take their seats and be silent. Sammy and Intisar occupied the first table they came across while Scylla and Firdaus walked away with 4 tables and sat down. Intisar's reaction. She is overwhelmed by the romantic setting. She whispers to Sammy, "It is quite the land of dreams. I can't believe that such a wonderful place is in Sudan." "Me too, my dear. Do you remember the places we used to meet in Gadaref City?" "Yes, I remember. On open roads where everyone's eyes were on us. Now we can see the huge difference between the 2 cities." Romantic dialogue and intimacy. The couple is finally able to enjoy privacy and express their feelings openly. Their conversation is filled with longing and hope for the future. "Sammy, do you think that when we get married, we will have a better honeymoon than we do now?" "Yes, it will be 100 times better honeymoon than this short one. You know, my dear Intisar, when we are married, I will take you around the world to see the 7 wonders of the world." Intisar responds with excitement and affection, and the 2 share a vision of traveling together and building a life of adventure and love. Physical affection. The privacy of the restaurant allows them to be physically close for the first time. He put his hand on her hair and started to smooth it out. He could hear her breathing. His hand touched her smooth cheek. He can hear her heartbeat. Keep feeling her cheek. They remained silent during that wonderful moment. He approached her ears and began whispering words of love into her soul. When those words failed to contain his strong love for her, his lips met hers. She responded to him, and her soul began to saturate her deep love for him. In that passionate kissing, they kept drinking from the fountain of their deep love for an exceptionally long time. Emotional impact. The moment is so intense that it feels transformative for both. It's the bride who came out of that wonderful time first. With sleepy eyes and a dreamy head, she asked her groom what time it was. But before he answered her question, she put her hands on her head and opened her eyes wide in astonishment. Sammy followed her as she stared, and he was surprised to see that the new friends, Scylla and Firdaus, were having a good time kissing too. Summary. Their first date at Hamad Restaurant is a pivotal moment in their relationship. It is the first time they experience true privacy and intimacy, allowing them to express their love physically and emotionally. The setting, with its romantic lighting and river views, becomes a symbol of their dreams for a future together, a stark contrast to the restrictions and dangers they face in their home city. The experience leaves them both feeling hopeful, deeply connected, and more determined to fight for their love. Scenes at the zoo, Blue Nile Movie Theater, Friendship Cinema, and Hotel Restaurant. Zoo. Sammy's sweet fiancé is delighted to visit the zoo for the first time in her life. She would make jokes and talk to each animal. Sammy had to pull or push her to move her to the next cage. He looked at his watch and realized half the time had been spent in a few cages. "Listen, my dear. If you want to talk to every animal, the honeymoon will be spent in the zoo only. Please, Sammy, let me talk to these 2 cute monkeys. Hello, Mr. Monkey. How are you, Lady Monkey? Do you love me?" Sammy once again had to pull her out of her hand. When they passed the cage of the beautiful monkeys, Intisar stopped her fiancé and asked surprisingly, Where are the other two? There are at least 4 or 5 cages in front of us. We must run to catch up with them. They raced quickly until they reached Scylla and Firdaus. Blue Nile Movie Theater. The Blue Nile Cinema is also known as the University of Khartoum Cinema. The second name has many reasons. First of all, the cinema is located near the university residence. Therefore, most of the visitors are university students. Secondly, it is difficult for the general public to understand most of the films shown there. Thirdly, ticket prices are high for ordinary people to afford. For Sammy and Scylla, the cinema is not a new place. They've been there several times. But that day was different because for the first time they walked down the hall with their beautiful girlfriends. So, they wished that the other students would see them walking hand in hand with their pretty girls. This wish comes true when they hear a voice calling Scylla's name. Sammy and Inisar continued walking while Scylla stopped with great pride and his beautiful girlfriend Firdaus automatically stopped with him. Then he turned back to see the friend he had seen at such a time. His girl also turned her face to see the friend. Unfortunately, he is Walid Hamza, who is one of her 2 former lovers. Scylla proudly told Walid, "Meet my new girlfriend, Firdaus Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir." Then he turned to his beloved and said, "This is Walid Hamza, one of my best friends at the university." The temperamental girl has been caught in the act of cheating in love. She is confused. Her troubled mind started to form many thoughts to escape. Starting from that idea, the girl will wish that the earth would open up and swallow her, or that she was not born to face such a difficult moment, or that the ceiling would fall on her. When she realized that none of these illusions could happen, she had to face the difficult situation. So, she looked first at her former lover, then to her new lover, and said, "I know Walid Hamza. He is living near my house in the city of Gedaref." After that, she turned her face and walked out with her new lover, leaving behind the deceived lover standing like a statue. Here's a short dialogue between Firdaus and Scylla, showing her sulky hesitation against his confident charm. Dialogue. Scylla, smiling, leaning casually, "You know, Firdaus, you don't have to hide behind that silence. I like you, why not admit it?" Firdaus, arms crossed, voice low and reluctant, "You say it so easily, but words don't change the cages we live in." Scylla, grinning, brushing off her gloom, "Then let me be the key. Call me your boyfriend, and the world will feel lighter." Firdaus, sighing, eyes downcast, "I don't believe in lightness, but if it keeps you close, then, maybe." Scylla, playful, triumphant, "That's all I needed. Even your maybe is enough for me." Tone and symbolism. Firdaus's sulky tone shows her reluctance and guarded nature. She accepts him not out of joy, but out of a need for connection. Scylla's charm contrasts sharply. He is confident, playful, and persuasive, embodying the allure of Khartoum's freer but riskier social life. The dialogue highlights the unequal emotional footing. Firdaus seeks refuge, while Scylla seeks conquest. In the novel, Scylla describes the ideal marriage life to Firdaus as a partnership based on love, respect, and equality, contrasting sharply with the oppressive, patriarchal norms that dominate their society. Scylla tells Firdaus that a true marriage should not be about obedience, fear, or the subjugation of one partner to the other, but about mutual support, understanding, and companionship. He explains that in an ideal marriage, both husband and wife should be friends and life partners, not just a wife serving her husband. The husband should love his wife when she is young and beautiful and remain loyal and loving even as she grows older. Scylla emphasizes that marriage should not be a source of fear or anxiety for the wife, nor should it be a relationship where the woman is constantly worried about being replaced or abandoned if she fails to meet her husband's expectations. Scylla's vision of marriage is one where both partners have agency, can express their feelings, and support each other through life's challenges. He encourages Firdaus to seek a relationship where she is valued for who she is, not just for her ability to serve or please a man. This perspective is a source of hope and comfort for Firdaus, who has internalized the belief that her only purpose is to marry, bear children, and serve her husband, and who lives in constant fear of being discarded or replaced. Here is a representative excerpt from Scylla's conversation with Firdaus. He told her that she would be his girlfriend and life partner, not just a wife. He will love her when she is young and beautiful, and he will still love and be loyal to her when she is old. When Firdos remembered those beautiful thoughts and promises that Sulla had put in her mind, she knew that a new person was born inside her. Then she went to sleep and had a sweet dream with her new boyfriend, Sulla. This vision stands in stark contrast to the rigid, fear-based model of marriage that Firdos has been taught, and it helps her begin to imagine a different, more fulfilling future for herself. The last day of the imaginary honeymoon in Khartoum. The last day of the honeymoon for the four young lovers, Intisar, Sami, Firdos, and Sulla, is filled with a bittersweet mix of joy, discovery, and the looming sense that their time of freedom and happiness is coming to an end. The day begins with breakfast at their hotel, where the sisters, Intisar and Firdos, share with their older sister Farida how much they enjoyed sightseeing with Sami. Sulla, who has become close to Firdos, is also present, and the group is full of energy and plans for the day. Morning. The sisters confide in Farida about their problems, but the mood is lightened by the anticipation of more sightseeing. The four friends Sami, Intisar, Firdos, and Sulla plan their last day in the capital, making lists of places to visit: the zoo, the National Museum, the University of Khartoum, the Chinese Friendship Hall, and the famous Hamad floating restaurant on the Nile. Zoo visit. The group starts their day at the zoo. Intisar is delighted, making jokes and talking to the animals, especially the monkeys. Sami teases her, saying if you want to talk to every animal, the honeymoon will be spent in the zoo only. Firdos, usually moody, is in good spirits, and Sulla is attentive to her. National Museum and lunch. After the zoo, they visit the National Museum, but find it less interesting, so they cut the visit short and head to a crowded restaurant for lunch. Intisar and Firdos, who have never tasted shish kebab before, declare it the most delicious food they've ever had. Chinese Friendship Hall Cinema. The group then walks to the Chinese Friendship Hall Cinema. Inside, they sit 2 by 2. During the film, Intisar whispers to Sami about Firdos' change in mood, and they both suspect she has found a soulmate in Sulla. The movie, a romantic drama, resonates with their own struggles and hopes, leaving them feeling uplifted. Hamad Floating Restaurant. As evening falls, they go to the Hamad Floating Restaurant, a magical place on the Nile with red lights and private tables. The friends are awestruck by the ambience. Intisar whispers to Sami, "It is quite the land of dreams." "I can't believe that such a wonderful place is in Sudan." The couples sit together, enjoying the privacy and romance. Sami promises Intisar that when they are married, he will take her around the world to see the 7 wonders. They talk about their dreams and the difference between the freedom of Khartoum and the constraints of Gedaref. Evening reflections. After dinner, the group returns to the hotel. The sisters spend an hour in confidential conversation with Farida, sharing their joys and worries. The day ends with everyone feeling the weight of returning to reality, but also grateful for the memories and the love they have shared. The last day of the imaginary honeymoon in Khartoum. On the last day of their imaginary honeymoon in Khartoum, the 4 lovers, Sami, Intisar, Sulla, and Firdos, wake up knowing their time together in the capital is coming to an end. The day is filled with a bittersweet mix of joy and the looming sense of separation. Morning. They begin with breakfast at the hotel, sharing laughter and playful teasing. The sisters, Intisar and Firdos, recount their favorite moments from the trip, while Sami and Sulla joke about the city's bustling energy and the adventures they've had. The group plans to revisit some of their favorite spots before their departure. Zoo visit. Their first stop is the zoo, a place that had enchanted Intisar with its sense of freedom and innocence. She insists on seeing the monkeys again, much to Sami's amusement. The group strolls through the zoo, feeding animals and taking in the sights. Intisar's childlike wonder is infectious, and even the usually reserved Firdos finds herself smiling and engaging with the animals. Blue Nile Cinema. Next, they head to the Blue Nile Cinema, where they watch a romantic film. The movie's themes of love overcoming adversity resonate deeply with the group, especially given their own struggles. Firdos, Sitting beside Sulla is particularly moved, her eyes glistening with unshed tears as she reflects on her own life and the fleeting nature of happiness. Lunch and reflections. After the film, they have lunch at a local restaurant. The conversation turns more introspective. Sulla encourages everyone to share what the trip has meant to them. Intisar speaks of newfound hope. Sammy expresses gratitude for the support of his friends, and Firdaus, though quiet, thanks Sulla for showing her a different side of life. Evening at the hotel. As evening falls, the group returns to the hotel. They gather on the balcony, watching the city lights shimmer along the Nile. There's a sense of peace and unity among them, as if the city itself is blessing their union and friendship. They promise to support each other, no matter what challenges lie ahead. Night reflection of Firdaus on her last day with Sulla in Khartoum. That night, Firdaus lies awake, her mind swirling with memories and emotions. The city's distant sounds drift through the window, mingling with her thoughts. She reflects on her journey. Her sense of duty and fear, raised to believe her worth was tied to obedience and service, she had always felt trapped by expectations. The contrast of Khartoum, the city had offered a glimpse of freedom, moments by the riverbank, laughter with friends, the anonymity of the bustling streets. Her bond with Sulla's kindness and respect had awakened something new in her. For the first time, she felt seen as a person, not just a role to be filled. She recalls their conversations, his gentle encouragement, his belief in her potential, and the way he listened without judgment. In a quiet, trembling monologue, Firdaus thinks, "I never imagined my life would end like this, 15 years old, and already broken beyond repair. They called me a wife, but I was never a wife. I was a child, stolen from my mother's arms, dragged by men who spoke of law and obedience as if those words could wash away their cruelty. They said it was God's will. Was it God's will that I be chained, starved, beaten, and raped until my body became a battlefield? Was it God's will that my tears fall like acid while an old man desecrated my soul? I remember the Nile, the cold water, the silence. I wished it would swallow me whole, but even death turned its face away. I wandered barefoot through Khartoum streets, praying for mercy, until strangers in a church gave me what my own people never did, kindness. For a moment, I felt human again. But mercy is fleeting when your name is written in the book of obedience. They hunted me like a stray dog, dragged me back to the house of horror, and called it lawful. Lawful. I think of Sulla now, his smile, his promise that love could make me new. I dictated a letter to him with trembling lips, every word soaked in pain. Did he read it? Did he know that his beloved was dying? I wanted to live for him, but my body betrayed me. Hunger gnawed at my strength, and the blows shattered my bones. They say I fought like a wild creature, that I tried to kill the monster who called himself my husband. Maybe I did. Maybe I wanted to taste freedom for one breath before the darkness claimed me. If anyone finds these words, let them know I was not disobedient. I was not rebellious. I was a girl who wanted to choose her own life. And for that, they killed me. They killed me with laws, with lust, with lies. But I swear, even as my voice fades, my soul will rise against them. I am Firdaus Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. I am not their property. I am not their shame. I am the innocent they buried under obedience. These scenes capture the emotional depth, the fleeting joy, and the underlying sorrow of the four lovers' last day together in Khartoum, as well as Firdaus's poignant reflection on her fate and her bond with Sulla. The final moments at the hotel restaurant. As the day draws to a close, the four friends gather for one last meal together at the hotel restaurant. The atmosphere is a blend of quiet reflection, gentle laughter, and the bittersweet knowledge that their time in Khartoum is ending. The restaurant is softly lit, with the city's night lights shimmering through the windows and the distant hum of Khartoum's nightlife providing a backdrop. The table is set with simple but delicious Sudanese dishes, shish kebab, fresh bread, and sweet tea. The friends sit close, their conversation flowing easily, but with a sense of savoring every moment. Direct excerpt, paraphrased and referenced. At 9 p.m., the four lovers took a taxi from the Blue Nile Cinema to the Hilton Hotel. It is a 20-minute drive away. The hotel's restaurant is located on the 20th floor. Intisar and Firdas had never been in an elevator before. Accordingly, their wonders started from there. Each of them holds her lover's hand tightly, not out of affection, but out of fear. When the elevator reached the restaurant, all four friends got out. They're amazed at the splendor of the wonderful spectacle. Intisar is the first lover to show admiration. "What an amazing beauty!" exclaimed the beautiful bride happily. "Do you think heaven would be more wonderful than this place?" None of the three other lovers took notice of her amazing remark. They all stand like statues and stare out at the magnificent sight of the capital city at night. It is like Paris at night. They look through the windows at the illuminated city. They can see the Blue Nile and the White Nile coming together at the confluence of the Mogran and forming the mighty Nile River. From there, the Nile River begins its long journey to Egypt, which ends at the Mediterranean Sea. There they can also see the beautiful Tooty Island, the zoo, the Chinese Friendship Hall, Nile Street, a big bridge, the Hamad floating restaurant, and riverbank. They remembered the great times they had in those beautiful locations. They felt like birds flying over the city and seeing its amazing beauty at night. "Let's fly over the city and visit all those places we've been together," Intisar whispered with dazzling eyes and a musical voice. "We will fly forever. We will never come back to Earth. We will make the moon our love nests and the stars our romantic homes. We will be free forever." While Intisar spoke with her poetic verses, her lover saw her face shining with amazing beauty. "Therefore," he said, "my sweet girlfriend, you are more beautiful than the moon, the stars, and this wonderful sight. I see the beauty of the whole universe concentrated in you." While the first two lovers gazed at the stunning beauty and expressed their deep love for each other, the second two lovers, Sulla and Firdas, have already disappeared into their cabin. They are in a hurry to discuss an important secret that caused many tears to fall from the eyes of the temperamental girl. Atmosphere and emotion. The friends are overwhelmed by the panoramic view of Khartoum at night, the rivers glimmering and the city alive below them. Intisar, always the poetic soul, dreams aloud of flying above the city, making the night a symbol of their freedom and love. Sammy, deeply moved, tells her she is more beautiful than the city lights, the moon, and the stars. Sulla and Firdas, meanwhile, slip away for a private conversation, where Firdas confesses her fears and hopes, and Sulla reassures her with gentle words. The ending. As the meal ends, the friends linger, reluctant to leave the magic of the moment. They promise to remember this night, the laughter, the view, the feeling of being young and in love, and the sense of hope that, even in a world full of hardship, they could find beauty and connection together. Firdas and Sulla's private talk. After dinner, Sulla and Firdas find a quiet corner to talk. Their conversation is honest and vulnerable. Firdas confides in Sulla about her fears of marriage, of losing her autonomy, of being forgotten. Sulla listens with empathy, offering reassurance and support. He tells her that she is not alone, that her voice matters, and that he will fight for her right to choose her own path. Their exchange is marked by tenderness and mutual respect. Sulla's words give Firdas a glimmer of hope, a sense that, despite everything, she is seen and valued for who she is. Final moments, farewell, and departure. The next morning, the four lovers prepare to leave Khartoum. There is a sense of sadness and nostalgia as they pack their bags and say goodbye to the city that, for a brief time, allowed them to dream and love freely. The bus ride back to Gedaref is somber, with each person lost in their thoughts, cherishing the memories of their imaginary honeymoon and the love that blossomed in the heart of Khartoum. Here's a detailed description of the bus trip back to Gedaref city for the four lovers, Intisar, Sammy, Firdas, and Sulla, and their sister Farida, based on the scenes and narrative style from the novel. The bus trip back to Gedaref city. After days of joy, discovery, and romance in Khartoum, the four lovers, Intisar and Sammy, Firdas and Sulla, along with their sister Farida, prepare for their return to Gedaref. The mood is bittersweet. The city that offered them a taste of freedom and happiness now fades behind them, and the reality of their lives in Gedaref looms ahead. Atmosphere on the bus. The journey begins with a sense of secrecy and anticipation. The group boards the bus, leaving behind the anonymity and relative openness of Khartoum for the tightly knit, conservative world of Gedaref. The bus is crowded and noisy, filled with the chatter of other passengers, the calls of vendors, and the hum of the radio. Yet, for the group, there is a sense of being in their own world, a bubble of shared memories and private jokes. As the bus rattles along the dusty road, the landscape shifts from the sprawling, chaotic energy of the capital to the familiar fields and villages of eastern Sudan. The physical movement mirrors a psychological transition from the hope and excitement of Khartoum back to the constraints and dangers of home. Emotional undercurrents. Inside the bus, the mood is subdued. Each of the lovers is lost in thought, replaying the moments of their imaginary honeymoon, the laughter at the zoo, the awe at the riverbank, the intimacy of Hamad's floating restaurant, and the shared dreams of a different life. There is a sense of nostalgia and quiet sadness, knowing that the freedom they experienced in Khartoum may not be possible in Gedaref. Farida, the returning sister from abroad, acts as a guardian and emotional anchor. She tries to keep spirits up, gently teasing her younger sisters and reminding them of the strength they have shown. Yet, she too is aware of the dangers that await them, the threats from their half-brother Omar, the pressure of forced marriages, and the ever-present scrutiny of their community. Private conversations and reflections. During the long ride, the couples find moments to talk quietly. Intisar and Sammy sit close together, hands intertwined, whispering about their favorite memories and making promises to support each other no matter what comes. Firdas and Sulla share a more tentative intimacy, both aware of the fragility of their new connection and the risks they face. There are moments of humor, too. At one point, an elderly man mistakes Intisar and Sammy for newlyweds and offers them blessings, prompting laughter and a sense of camaraderie among the group. The wait of return. As the bus draws closer to Gedaref, the mood shifts. The group grows quieter, each person retreating into their own thoughts. The familiar sights of home, fields, markets, the outlines of the city bring a mix of comfort and dread. The lovers know that their time together in Khartoum was a rare gift and that the challenges ahead will test their courage and loyalty. On the bus trip back to Gedaref city, the four lovers, Intisar, Sammy, Firdas, and Sulla, are joined by Intisar's older sister Frida. The atmosphere of the return journey is markedly different from the excitement and hopefulness of their trip to Khartoum. The bus ride is described as long, crowded, and tense, reflecting the emotional weight the group carries after their days in the capital. During the journey, the friends are mostly lost in their own thoughts, each reflecting on the experiences and changes they have gone through. The narrative notes that the sisters reminisce about the wonderful time that has just passed, recalling the sights, the sense of freedom, and the moments of intimacy and joy they shared in Khartoum. The friends envision a bright future yet to come, making tentative plans to meet again and keeping their connection alive despite the challenges ahead. There is a sense of anxiety and foreboding, especially as they approach Gedaref, knowing that the return to their conservative hometown means a return to social scrutiny, family pressures, and the threat of renewed persecution. The conversation is subdued, with much of it happening in whispers or through exchanged glances. The group discusses practical matters, such as how they will keep in touch and when they might see each other again. They also talk about the difficulties they expect to face upon returning home, and there is a shared understanding that their time in Khartoum was a rare and precious escape from the constraints of their daily lives. Here is a direct excerpt that captures the mood and content of their conversation. When the bus had traveled for a few hours, the friends began whispering plans to meet again. First, they decided to meet once a week. Sulla suggested a deserted road he knew for their meeting. The proposal was accepted because there was no alternative. Besides that, they planned other ways to keep in touch. Sammy invites Intisar, Farida, and Firdos to see a movie. He will also call his friend Sulla to watch the same movie. Girlfriends should ask their sister Frida to call their boyfriends to her birthday party at home. Sulla then has to pretend that he is touched by the generosity of Frida and Sammy and thus invites them all to lunch at his home. During these gatherings, Farida and their mother Sarah must be informed of the new love relationship between Sulla and Firdas, and they are officially engaged. Then the question of when the four lovers should be united in marriage is answered. They agreed that their marriage dates should not be in the distant future. The bus ride is also marked by a sense of melancholy and nostalgia, as the friends realize that their brief period of happiness and freedom is coming to an end. The narrative emphasizes the contrast between the openness of Khartoum and the stifling atmosphere of Gedaref, and the friends' conversation reflects their longing to hold on to the connections and memories they have made. Summary of the bus trip conversation. Reminiscing about their time in Khartoum. Making plans to meet again in secret. Discussing how to keep their relationships alive. Expressing anxiety about returning to Gedaref. Whispering about hopes for the future and the possibility of marriage. The overall tone is bittersweet, with the friends cherishing their shared experiences while bracing themselves for the challenges that await them back home. The visit of Omar and Hassan. Setting. The mother of Intisar is at home in Gedaref, while her three daughters, including Intisar, are away in Khartoum. The household is vulnerable, with only the mother present. Arrival. Omar and Hassan arrive uninvited, carrying the weight of patriarchal authority and hostility. Their presence is immediately intimidating, two men representing the oppressive structures that have already harmed Intisar and her sisters. Tone of encounter. The visit is unpleasant and coercive, marked by accusations and veiled threats. They question the mother about her daughter's whereabouts and behavior, implying that their independence in Khartoum is dishonorable. Their language is sharp, filled with suspicion and disdain, designed to shame and frighten her. Impact on the mother. She feels cornered and powerless, forced to endure their interrogation without the protection of her daughters. The visit underscores her isolation and the vulnerability of women left behind in patriarchal households. Emotionally, it is a moment of humiliation. She is treated not as a respected elder, but as someone accountable for her daughter's defiance. Symbolism. Omar and Hassan's intrusion represents the reach of patriarchal control, extending even into the private sphere of the home. The unpleasantness of the visit highlights the constant surveillance and harassment women face, even when physically separated from their oppressors. It foreshadows the dangers awaiting the daughters in Khartoum, showing that resistance is never free from repercussions. Omar and Hassan visit the house of Intisar while she is away in Khartoum with her lover Sami and her two sisters because they are plotting to force Intisar into a marriage with Hassan. Omar, who is Intisar's half-brother and acts as her legal guardian under Sudanese Islamic law, collaborates with Hassan, who is infatuated with Intisar, to arrange a marriage contract without her knowledge or consent. Their visit to the house is part of this conspiracy. They want to secure the marriage contract while Intisar is absent, taking advantage of her absence to push through the arrangement without her being able to object or resist. During this visit, Omar and Hassan inform Intisar's mother that they have already concluded the marriage contract in the mosque, with Omar acting as her guardian and Hassan as the groom. This is a shock to the family, as Intisar's mother and sisters are opposed to the marriage and had hoped to protect her from such fate. The visit is therefore a pivotal moment in the story, marking the betrayal by Omar and the escalation of Hassan's pursuit, which leads to further tragedy and conflict for Intisar and her family. Omar, Intisar's half-brother, and Hassan, the man who wishes to marry Intisar, visit the house of Intisar while she is away in Khartoum with Sami and her sisters because they are plotting to secure Hassan's marriage to Intisar by any means necessary. Their visit is motivated by jealousy, rivalry, and a desire to prevent Intisar from marrying Sami, whom she truly loves. Omar, acting as Intisar's legal guardian under Sudanese Islamic law, and Hassan, who has been repeatedly rejected by Intisar, conspire together to force the marriage through legal and social manipulation. More details about the visit. Who is present? Omar, the half-brother and self-appointed guardian of Intisar, Hassan, the rejected suitor, and Intisar's mother, Sarah, are present at the house. Intisar and her sisters are away in Khartoum at this time. Purpose of the visit. Hassan and Omar come to the house to inform Sarah that, in Intisar's absence, Omar has acted as her guardian and has already married her off to Hassan in a mosque, without her knowledge or consent. This is a legal but deeply unethical act under the prevailing interpretation of Sharia law in Sudan, where a male guardian can marry off a woman without her presence or agreement. What happens during the visit? The visit is confrontational. Sarah is shocked and angered by the news. She tries to assert that only Intisar's older sister, Farida, is her true guardian and that Omar has no right to marry off her daughter. Omar insists that, as the eldest male, he is the legal guardian and that the marriage is already done. Hassan confirms this, stating that the marriage contract has been signed in the mosque, with the imam's approval, and that Intisar is now legally his wife. Sarah is devastated and powerless to reverse what has been done in her daughter's absence. Aftermath. This forced marriage is a turning point in the story. When Intisar returns and learns of what has happened, she is traumatized and feels betrayed by her family and community. The event sets off a chain of further abuse, legal battles, and ultimately Intisar's desperate attempts to escape her fate. Key points. The visit is a calculated move by Omar and Hassan to exploit Intisar's absence and force a marriage that she has repeatedly refused. Omar uses his legal status as male guardian to override Intisar's wishes and her mother's objections. The marriage is conducted without Intisar's knowledge or consent, highlighting the patriarchal and coercive nature of the legal system depicted in the novel. This event is central to the novel's critique of forced marriage, guardianship laws, and the lack of agency for women in such a context. The house was unusually quiet. Intisar, along with her sisters, was far away in Khartoum, seeking a brief escape from the suffocating atmosphere of Gadaref and the relentless pressure of family and society. Her absence, however, did not bring peace to the home she left behind. On this day, her mother, Sarah, was alone in the house, busying herself with preparations for her daughter's return. The air was heavy with anticipation and worry, for Sarah knew that trouble often arrived unannounced. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a sharp, insistent knock at the door. Sarah opened it to find Omar, her late husband's son from his first wife, Sakina, standing beside Hassan, the persistent suitor who had long coveted Intisar's hand in marriage. Their faces were set with determination, and there was a coldness in Omar's eyes that Sarah had come to dread. Without waiting for an invitation, the two men entered the house. Omar, emboldened by his status as the eldest male in the family, wasted no time in making his intentions clear. He announced, with a sense of finality, that he had acted as Intisar's legal guardian and had already married her off to Hassan in the mosque. The marriage, he declared, was now a legal fact performed in Intisar's absence, without her knowledge or consent, but fully sanctioned by the imam and the law. Sarah was stunned. She protested, insisting that only Farida, Intisar's older sister, had the right to act as guardian, and that Omar had no authority to make such a life-altering decision. But her words fell on deaf ears. Omar, unmoved, insisted that as the eldest male, he alone held the power to decide Intisar's fate. Hassan, standing beside him, confirmed the story, producing the marriage contract as proof and declaring that Intisar was now his wife. The confrontation was bitter and painful. Sarah's pleas and anger were met with indifference. The two men, having accomplished their mission, left as abruptly as they had arrived, leaving Sarah devastated and powerless. When Intisar returned home and learned what had happened, she was shattered. The betrayal by her own family, the violation of her autonomy, and the realization that her fate had been sealed in her absence marked a turning point in her life. This forced marriage, orchestrated by Omar and Hassan, set in motion a chain of events that would lead to further suffering, legal battles, and Intisar's desperate struggle for freedom and dignity. Narrative retelling of the scene. This scene is a pivotal moment in the novel, exposing the patriarchal and coercive nature of the legal and social systems that govern the characters' lives, and it marks the beginning of Intisar's journey from victimhood to resistance. The house is tense as Omar and Hassan enter. Sarah, Intisar's mother, is immediately on guard, her face hardening as she sees Omar, the son of her late husband's first wife, and Hassan, the persistent suitor her daughter has repeatedly rejected. The air is thick with old resentments and rivalry. Omar, with a cold sense of entitlement, asserts his authority. I am their legal guardian. The law gives me this right. Sarah, her voice trembling with anger, retorts, you are not their guardian. You are their enemy. Only Farida can speak for Intisar. But Omar is unmoved. He reveals, with a twisted sense of triumph, that he has already acted. Yesterday, in the mosque, I gave Intisar in marriage to Hassan. The Imam signed the contract. She is now his wife. Sarah is stunned. She turns to Hassan, who confirms the deed. Your daughter is now my wife. The contract is signed and witnessed. The mother's world collapses. She realizes her daughter has been sold, like property, in her absence. The men leave, their business concluded, leaving Sarah in shock and despair, knowing she must now break the news to her daughter. Intisar's response when she learns about the forced marriage. When Intisar returns and learns about the forced marriage, her reaction is one of utter devastation and disbelief. She is told by her mother that, in her absence, her half-brother Omar has used his legal authority to marry her off to Hassan without her knowledge or consent. The news is so shocking that Intisar faints and collapses, her mind unable to process the betrayal and the loss of agency over her own life. When she regains consciousness, Intisar is numb, her mind blank. She is unable to respond to Sammy's desperate pleas, and her body is limp in his arms. The trauma is so severe that she temporarily loses her memory, unable to recognize those around her or understand what has happened. The forced marriage is experienced as a violent theft of her autonomy and future, a betrayal not only by her half-brother, but by the entire system that allows such an act to occur. In summary, Omar and Hassan's visit is a calculated act to exploit patriarchal and religious law, marrying Intisar off without her consent. The scene is fraught with tension, betrayal, and the abuse of power. Intisar's response, when she learns of the forced marriage, is one of shock, collapse, and psychological trauma, highlighting the devastating impact of such practices on women's lives. When Sammy learns about the forced marriage of Intisar to his rival Hassan, his response is one of profound shock, devastation, and emotional collapse. After returning from Khartoum with Intisar's sisters, Sammy is told by Intisar's family that, in her absence, her half-brother Omar has used his legal authority to marry her off to Hassan without her knowledge or consent. The news is so overwhelming that Sammy is physically and emotionally shaken. He immediately seeks out Intisar, desperate to comfort her and to understand what has happened. Upon seeing Intisar, Sammy finds her in a state of shock and collapse. She is unresponsive, her mind blank from the trauma. Sammy tries to hold her, to reassure her, and to promise that no power on earth or in heaven can separate them. However, Intisar is so traumatized by the betrayal and the loss of her agency that she faints and loses consciousness. Sammy, in turn, is overcome with grief and anger. He trembles, sweats, and is filled with rage at the injustice that has been done to the girl he loves. He declares, with great emotion, that he will never allow anyone to take Intisar from him, and that he is willing to fight against the entire world to protect their love. Sammy's response is a mixture of heartbreak, helplessness, and defiance. He is deeply wounded by the forced marriage, but his love for Intisar remains unwavering. He vows to stand by her, to fight for her dignity, and to resist the oppressive system that has torn them apart. This moment marks a turning point in the story, as Sammy's commitment to Intisar becomes a symbol of resistance against patriarchal and religious injustice. Implications of the forced marriage. The forced marriage of Intisar to Hassan, engineered by her half-brother Omar while she is away in Khartoum with her lover Sammy and her sisters, has profound and far-reaching consequences for all the main characters and the broader themes of the novel. 1. Legal and religious consequences. The marriage is conducted without Intisar's knowledge, consent, or presence, but is considered valid under the prevailing interpretation of Sharia law in Sudan. This means that, in the eyes of the law and society, Intisar is now the legal wife of Hassan, regardless of her wishes or prior relationship with Sami. This legal status strips Intisar of her agency and autonomy, making her subject to the verdict of obedience, a mechanism by which a husband can compel his wife to return to his home and submit to his authority, with the threat of police enforcement if she refuses. 2. Personal and emotional impact. Intisar is devastated when she learns about the forced marriage. She feels betrayed by her family, especially her half-brother Omar, and experiences a profound sense of loss, isolation, and despair. Her dreams of love and self-determination are shattered, and she is plunged into a state of psychological trauma. Sami, upon learning of the marriage, is equally distraught. He feels powerless, angry, and desperate, knowing that the law and society are against him and Intisar. He fears for her safety and well-being, and the couple's relationship is placed under immense strain. 3. Social and familial fallout. The forced marriage leads to a breakdown of trust and unity within Intisar's family. Her mother and sisters are horrified by Omar's actions, and the family is thrown into turmoil and grief. The community's complicity and gossip further isolate Intisar, reinforcing her status as a victim and outcast. 4. Escalation of violence and tragedy. The marriage sets off a chain of tragic events. Intisar is subjected to further attempts at control, violence, and, ultimately, the threat of being taken by force to the house of obedience. Her sister Firdos also becomes a victim of similar abuse, leading to her eventual torture and suffering. The situation escalates to the point where Intisar is forced to flee, becoming a fugitive and facing the risk of imprisonment, torture, and even execution for defying the verdict of obedience and the forced marriage. 5. Broader thematic implications. The forced marriage is a central example of the novel's critique of patriarchal and religious systems that deny women agency and use legal and religious mechanisms to justify violence and oppression. It highlights the intersection of personal tragedy and systemic injustice, showing how individual lives are destroyed by laws and customs that treat women as property rather than persons. In summary, the forced marriage of Intisar to Hassan is not just a personal catastrophe for the characters involved. It is a pivotal event that exposes the deep injustices of the society depicted in the novel. It leads to emotional devastation, family breakdown, social ostracism, and a spiral of violence and tragedy, while also serving as a powerful indictment of the systems that enable such abuses. How does Intisar's family react to the forced marriage? Intisar's family reacts to the forced marriage with shock, grief, and a sense of betrayal. When the mother learns that her daughter has been married off in her absence, without her knowledge or consent, she is devastated and overwhelmed by the injustice. When she discovers her daughter was married off without her knowledge or consent, she feels devastated by the injustice. The half-brother of Intisar, Omar, orchestrated the marriage, and there is a heated confrontation when he and Hassan visit the family home to announce what they have done. The mother refuses to accept his claim to be the legal guardian of her daughters and insists that only the eldest sister has the right to act as guardian for her two daughters. The sisters are equally horrified. Frida is particularly vocal, denouncing Omar's actions as a betrayal and vowing to fight for her sister's rights. She is resolute in contesting the legality of the marriage and safeguarding her sister against being compelled into an unwanted relationship. The family is thrown into turmoil, with arguments, tears, and a sense of helplessness in the face of the patriarchal and legal structures that have enabled Omar and Hassan to act in this way. Overall, the forced marriage causes a deep rift within the family, leading to anger, sorrow, and a desperate search for justice and protection for Intisar. The forced marriage of Intisar to Hassan is a devastating turning point in the love story between Intisar and Sami. This event is orchestrated while Intisar is away in Khartoum with her lover Sami and her two sisters. During her absence, her half-brother Omar and Hassan visit her family home and, without her knowledge or consent, arrange and conduct a marriage contract between Intisar and Hassan through the local imam, exploiting their authority and the absence of her true female guardians. Emotional consequences. Betrayal and trauma. When Intisar learns about the forced marriage, she is overwhelmed by shock, grief, and a sense of betrayal, not only by her half-brother and Hassan, but also by the broader family and community structures that enabled this act. She feels her autonomy and dignity have been violated. Isolation. The forced marriage isolates Intisar emotionally. She feels abandoned and unsupported, even by those who should have protected her. This deepens her sense of loneliness and despair. Impact on the relationship with Sami. Despair and hopelessness. The news of the forced marriage devastates Sami. He is filled with anger, helplessness, and a sense of loss. The couple's dreams of a future together are shattered, and both are plunged into despair. Strained communication. The forced marriage creates a barrier between Intisar and Sami. Intisar internalizes guilt and shame, feeling responsible for the suffering that has befallen both herself and her lover. Sami, in turn, is tormented by his inability to protect his beloved and prevent the injustice. Risk and defiance. Despite the forced marriage, Intisar and Sami continue to love each other and, at great personal risk, maintain contact and attempt to resist the verdict imposed upon them. Their relationship becomes an act of defiance against the oppressive structures that seek to separate them. Broader implications. Social stigma. Intisar is stigmatized as a disobedient wife and faces social ostracism. Her relationship with Sami is now considered adulterous by the community and religious authorities, further endangering both of them. Legal and physical danger. The forced marriage exposes Intisar to the threat of legal punishment, including the possibility of being taken by force to the House of Obedience or facing corporal punishment. Sami also faces danger, as his continued involvement with Intisar is now seen as a crime. Summary. The forced marriage is a catastrophic blow to Intisar and Sami's relationship. It transforms their love from a source of hope and joy into a struggle for survival and dignity. Their bond, once a private sanctuary, becomes a site of resistance against overwhelming social, legal, and familial forces. The trauma, isolation, and danger that follow test their love to its limits, but also reveal the depth of their commitment to each other in the face of injustice. Here are direct excerpts from Intisar and Sami's reactions to the news of the forced marriage, as depicted in the novel. Intisar's reaction. When Intisar learns about her forced marriage to Hassan, she is overwhelmed by shock and despair. The narrative describes her response. Her mind went blank once she found out she is a married woman. When she no longer responded to his words, he looked at her face. He saw that her face had become lifeless. He started shaking her body and shouting in her ears, "Intisar, please don't go and leave me. Nobody can take you from me." However, his beloved did not respond to his vibration and words. Therefore, he has passed out too. Both lovers collapsed to the floor. Intisar's body over Sami's body. The mother Sarah also lost consciousness when she saw her daughter Intisar collapse. This passage shows the depth of her devastation. She is so traumatized that she faints, unable to process the betrayal and loss of agency. Sami's reaction. Sami's response is equally intense and emotional. His whole body is trembling and is sweating from head to feet. His face is also filled with anger. He looked at the others and said with much firmness and anger that no power in heaven or authority in the whole world could separate me from Intisar because she gave me her life and I sold my life to her. With every word he said, he tightened his grip on his beloved girlfriend. But she did not hear a single word of what he said. Her mind went blank once she found out she is a married woman. Sami's reaction is a mixture of rage, helplessness, and desperate love. He refuses to accept the forced separation, declaring his eternal commitment to Intisar, even as she is physically and emotionally overwhelmed. The family's reaction. The family is also thrown into chaos. The mother Sarah also lost consciousness when she saw her daughter Intisar collapse. Sulla is the first to overcome the shock. When he saw the two lovers collapsing and falling to the ground, he grabbed Firdaus's hand and shouted in her ears, "Where is your phone? We must contact the doctor." These excerpts vividly illustrate the catastrophic emotional impact of the forced marriage on both Intisar and Sami, as well as the immediate family. After Frida learns about the forced marriage of her sister Intisar to Hasan, she is deeply shocked and immediately decides to take action to defend her sister's rights and challenge the injustice. Here's how the scene unfolds and how her mother responds. Frida's decision. Upon hearing from her mother about the forced marriage engineered by Omar, the half-brother, and Hasan while Intisar is away in Khartoum, Frida is outraged. She declares that she will not allow this injustice to stand. Frida vows to go directly to the imam who performed the marriage contract, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, to confront him and demand the annulment of the marriage. She also plans to confront Hasan and his family, making it clear that Intisar is not a slave to be sold and that she has the right to choose her own life partner. Frida is determined to use all her resources, including her savings, to hire a lawyer and fight the case in court if necessary. She sees herself as the sole guardian and protector of her sisters and is prepared to sacrifice everything for their freedom and dignity. Mother's response. Frida's mother, Sarah, is initially overwhelmed by the situation and the betrayal by Omar. She is heartbroken and fearful for her daughter's futures. When Frida announces her intention to fight the forced marriage, her mother is torn. On one hand, she admires Frida's courage and determination. On the other, she is deeply worried about the risks and the potential consequences for the family. Sarah expresses concern that challenging the marriage could bring further harm or scandal, and she is anxious about the power and influence of the men involved. Nevertheless, she ultimately supports Frida's resolve, recognizing that her daughter's actions are motivated by love and a sense of justice. Sarah agrees that they cannot simply accept the situation and must do everything possible to protect Intisar and restore her rights. Direct excerpt, paraphrased for clarity. Frida rose to her feet and angrily said, "How could such an evil plot be committed against my sister Intisar while I am alive? Could an evil person like the criminal Omar sell my sister as if she was his father's property?" In summary, Frida's reaction is one of immediate, determined resistance to the forced marriage, and her mother, though fearful, ultimately supports her daughter's decision to fight for Intisar's rights and freedom. Frida's plan in detail. Immediate confrontation with religious authority, Frida decides to go directly to the imam, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, who performed the marriage contract. She intends to confront him about the legality and morality of the marriage, arguing that it was conducted without Intisar's knowledge, presence, or consent, and to demand that he annul the marriage. Legal action. Frida is determined to challenge the marriage in court. She plans to hire a lawyer, using all her savings if necessary, to fight for her sister's rights. She is prepared to take the case through the legal system to have the marriage declared void and to protect Intisar from being forced to live with a man she did not choose. Direct confrontation with Hasan and his family. Frida intends to confront Hasan and his family directly, making it clear that Intisar is not property to be traded or sold, and that she has the right to choose her own life partner. She is ready to face any social backlash or threats from the powerful men involved. Mobilizing family support, Frida asserts her role as the sole guardian and protector of her sisters, especially in the absence of their father. She rallies her mother and younger siblings, making it clear that she will not allow the injustice to stand and that the family must unite to defend Intisar's rights. Preparedness for sacrifice. Frida is willing to sacrifice her own job, savings, and even her future prospects to ensure her sister's freedom and dignity. She sees this as a moral and familial duty. In summary, Frida's plan is bold, multi-pronged, and driven by a sense of justice and familial responsibility. She is prepared to confront religious and legal authorities, challenge powerful men, mobilize her family, and make personal sacrifices to fight for Intisar's right to choose her own destiny. Frida's decision. Upon hearing from her mother that Omar and Hassan have arranged and conducted a marriage contract for Intisar in her absence, Frida is shocked and furious. She recognizes that this was done without Intisar's knowledge, consent, or presence, and that Omar, acting as guardian, has betrayed his half-sisters for money and out of rivalry. Frida's immediate response is to take charge as the only responsible adult in the family who genuinely cares for her sister's welfare. Frida decides to confront the situation directly by seeking out the religious leader, the Imam/Mazun, who performed the marriage contract with the intention of having the contract annulled. Gather all the necessary documents and evidence to prove that Omar is not a legitimate guardian and that Intisar's consent was never given. Enlist the support of Sami, Intisar's true beloved, to accompany her so they can present a united front and make it clear that Intisar already has a fiancé whom she loves and who has the family support. If the Imam refuses to annul the contract, Frida plans to escalate the matter to the authorities or the courts, and, if necessary, to the wider community, to expose the injustice and protect her sister's autonomy. More details on Frida's plan. Frida's plan is methodical and courageous. She prepares all the correspondence and evidence showing that Intisar has always refused Hassan's proposals and has been clear about her wish to continue her studies and marry Sami. She intends to confront the Imam with this evidence and demand that he acknowledge the marriage as invalid due to lack of the bride's consent. Frida is also prepared to go public if necessary, to shame those who have conspired against her sister and to rally support from anyone in the community who values justice and women's rights. She reassures her mother and sisters that she will not rest until Intisar's freedom is restored and the forced marriage is overturned. In summary, Frida's response is one of immediate, principled action. She refuses to accept the forced marriage and is determined to use every means at her disposal, legal, religious, and social, to protect her sister's autonomy. Her mother, though fearful, ultimately supports Frida's resolve, recognizing that it is the only hope for justice and dignity for her daughters.